The worst of all was the Goto. There is a wood-cut book purporting to show the finer points of the study of the Goto family. And I also have a later translation that was someone did of the material that's written with the drawings in that manuscript. Tells you absolutely nothing. Plus the fact that it also is inaccurate. From many of the statements, they tell you which little tick here and tick there was supposed to identify the work of a particular artist, and there is no such mark. There were supposed to be secret marks that the Goto used to identify the work of their ancestors, which that doesn't exist either. And many of the certifications that they wrote, even for their, let's say, their grandfather, are mostly works of fiction, actually. I mean, they have no... But the most valuable set of fittings that you could have 200 years ago was a complete set of the Goto masters, with having a pair of Menuki, a Kozuka, and a Kogai set for every one of the 16 mainline masters. Well, the earlier generations, they had to manufacture all this material because it really didn't exist. And it was usually the 16th or 17th generation who would put all this material together. They were hugely expensive and valuable. I mean, it was a dowry worth of material. But in the early material, early artists, 90% of it is reproduction. And that diminishes as the generations go by until the last man probably made most of the, not only the material in his name, but the material in his ancestors' name as well. There was a time around 1600, the 10th Goto Rensho, took the school from Kyoto to Edo. But he had no following. The history of the school, the history of his ancestors, all the great material that had gone into the Goto name was still in Kyoto, so he had virtually to start over again in Edo to build a business. He had a huge number of fittings made by other members of his school and family in imitation of the early work of the first 4 or 5 great artists in the family, but they were all fakes, and fakes of 1650, that period. Today they are passed off as genuine, which they are not. Almost all the attributions of the early Goto are fantasy at best. The first master was Goto Yujo, and he did make probably a few pair of gold, solid gold Menuki, but that's about all. Today there's whole sets of fittings attributed to him which are spurious at best. So we have to contend with the fact that the books are not reliable, the experts are not reliable, and even the artists who made these pieces are not reliable. So you're stuck with learning all of this material on your own by actually observing the pieces in your hand. I had never had a chance to study many early Goto pieces, but recently I've been able to buy quite a few of them. And they all turned out to be something other than they were attributed to. And some of them are such superior workmanship that I have no idea who made them, even though they're attributed to the Goto. The quality of the workmanship is far beyond the average Goto works that you see in the books or in hand. So there were other artists that we don't know who they were, and we have no knowledge of why they are not recorded, but they certainly should be, because they were very fine artists and they made very superior material. Yujo, who was a 15th century artist, a samurai, and made fittings as a hobby or in his spare time, had to learn how to work metal. It didn't come to him in a dream or something. In the research I've done recently, I've discovered that the men who, metal artists who made much of the metal material that's used in temples and shrines on the altars, or various parts of the Buddhist metalwork, their work was as fine as was being done in 1450, and they no doubt were the teachers of people like Goto Yujo, but again, none of the work is signed, so we have no idea who these men were, but certainly the quality of their work is equal to the sword fittings of the same period that they were working, and so I surmise that they were the actual artists who taught the Goto and others of that period how to make sword fittings. Now there's a huge gap in all of this. The Heian period in the 9th and 10th centuries, they were doing fabulous metalwork of huge detail with very fine craftsmanship. And there are quite a large number of extant examples of these pieces, most of which are in shrines and temples. But they show a quality of craftsmanship equal to anything that was made in 1850. They were artists who worked for the imperial court, the emperor's court, and they didn't sign because they were working under the imperial aegis, and so it was not proud to sign your name. If you were making an object for the emperor, you certainly didn't put your name on it. But the amount of material, which is still extant and illustrated in several very good books, shows artwork of great standing. Naturally, this is all soft metal. It's not iron, it's the soft metal material. The iron material came out of the swordsmiths, probably, who would make sword guards on the side. If they didn't have a commission for a sword, why, they would make a sword guard so they could keep selling material. And eventually, by, say, 1250, independent artists were making sword guards as their sole livelihood and their sole artistic ability. They didn't sign their names either because it was not considered proper at that time. So we're only guessing who they might have been, and also how they are all related one to the other. But it would seem that it depended on the provincial area that they lived in and whether they were under the control of the daimyo of the province that they worked in, and if he was a man of taste and breeding, he would hire artists to make pieces for him and the people who worked under him and with him. So that there is no way of identifying our early work. I've developed a personal way of identifying the age of tsuba by judging the walls of the open work, the tsukashi guards, and some of the soft metal guards, where I can examine the amount of incrustation that has accumulated on those areas over the last 400 or 500 years. And the way I started was, say I had a guard which was 1850, I would see how much incrustation was on that guard, and then I would look at another one and it would have considerably more, so I would move the date of that piece back to, say, 1700, and then keep doing that until I found a guard with sufficient incrustation that it looked like maybe it was 1400 or even earlier. Luckily, the owners and dealers in Japan didn't clean these walls on the work, so they have remained with the original incrustation. And I and friends, I have given a name to all this in a joking way of saying it is my crud index, so that I judge the age by the amount of crud that is accumulated on the walls of the tsukashi or in the crevices of the soft metal guards, where you can, under a magnification and good sunlight, you can pretty well judge all these pieces. What you have in the end is your own personal estimation of the pieces. I doubt that anyone in Japan would care about what I have found for myself and what I have studied for myself, because it goes strictly against the protocols of study and accumulated knowledge in Japan today. And anyhow, the history and the age of pieces and how they fit one to the other is not something that interests the scholars in Japan anyway. They are far from the type of student who uses rational empirical study to aid their ability to judge and see how all the schools, artists, times, and periods fit one to the other. But I am determined to continue on with my own version of this study, and we will see if I ever get a chance, or perhaps what we're doing now can be published, and there will be somebody who will be willing and able to carry on where I am leaving off now.